and a really cool pimp hat. And he showed his Sonny Liston fight, which, as you saw in my film, is the bloodiest fight in boxing history. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Yes. Okay. Do you understand? Yes. Good afternoon. And yes, it's a dream come true for from the channel. So welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Bueno, yo quisiera comenzar preguntándole con su primer documental. Es muy interesante porque habla sobre el jazz, toda esa música, y me gustaría saber sobre cómo fue la meta adquirida de que la gente, los jóvenes hoy día puedan recibir el jazz, el blues de una manera increíble y también por el amor de Jon Hendricks.
And John always do that. He goes early in your career. And yes, he's asking you about your first documentary, the Jon Hendricks. And yes, the question is, looking back all those years, how do you see the perception of the youngers from the jazz, but also from the life from Jon Hendricks?
Okay, let me just think about that for a second. So, have you seen that film, the Jon Hendricks, the Freddie Sessions? That's not easily found.
I will ask John. I haven't seen it, but I will ask John. John, ¿tú lo viste? Porque dice que es muy difícil de conseguir.
Eso lo pasaron en televisión.
I believe to John because this he told me that this documentary was shown on TV, and I believe him because the one from Daniel Johnston I watched it on TV, of course, like many years ago, and we will talk about that. But if John told me that he saw it, I believe him because John is an expert looking for all these movies, man.
Okay. Well, I made the Jon Hendricks, the Freddie Sessions documentary independently pretty much right after I got out of college. It was my first film. It was it's not a feature, it's a half hour. And it was a 16 millimeter independent film. And it's about the jazz artist Jon Hendricks of the legendary vocalese trio Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. And Jon, he was an elder statesman of jazz. I loved jazz. I'm a big fan of all genres of music, but I happen to love jazz. And he was going into a recording studio to do a cover of the classic Miles Davis song, Freddie Freeloader, from the legendary album Kind of Blue. And he had gathered up some of his younger proteges who became huge jazz stars, George Benson, Al Jarreau, and Bobby McFerrin. And he was going into the studio with the crack band to cover that song. He had Jimmy Cobb, the original drummer from Miles Davis's band from the album Kind of Blue, on drums. Tommy Flanagan was on the piano, and a bass player named George Moratis. So it was an all-star session with Jon as the leader. And what was interesting, he had written vocalese parts to the legendary solos of John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Cannonball Adderley, and on the piano, Wynton Kelly. So all the solos of that classic song, Freddie Freeloader, are now being sung in vocalese style. So that was astounding to hear that process and watch these great artists work. And nobody really knew it at the time, but Freddie Freeloader, which was just a title of a song, was actually a real guy from Philadelphia, who Philadelphia used to have an incredible jazz scene where John Coltrane used to play a lot. And there was a place called Pep's Show Bar. And as the film shows and explains, Hendricks tells the story of the real Freddie Freeloader that inspired this song. So that's the story of the film, held together by this session that, I basically just shot 16 millimeter, 2 cameras handheld, and just try to light it beautifully like a Blue Note jazz album cover that I admired so much. And, it's a first effort. I'm proud of the film. It became a PBS national TV special here in the States. And I was just a kid. I was right out of school. I was like 22. So that was my first professional credit. And that's how I sort of got the ball rolling.
Eso es interesante saber porque, bueno, yo quisiera preguntarle por una creación que tú tuviste, que es el autor de JT LeRoy, porque hay
Mhm.
algo que sí me pareció interesante, Jeff, es sobre el poder la gente conocer la verdadera historia, el impacto, cómo fue esa percepción que tuvo al poder conocer pues, toda la verdad y que pues cómo fue el cambio trascendental que tuvieron sobre ello y porque en Latinoamérica mucha gente lo vio y fue interesante conocer.
After all these years of this movie, how do you see that the perception about this history, about JT LeRoy and Laura and the whole crazy history that happened has been perceived? I don't know. Do you feel that the people has somehow changed their minds about this history or receive it very well? Because in fact, in internet said something like it was like a catfish before catfish. It was a history that many people got, what? This really happened? So many years ago, how do you feel that the perception of this documentary is being now?
I thought it was an amazing story that was about, a very misunderstood artist, a great writer, and Laura Albert. And I love the story, and I love the story behind the story. So I decided to tell it. And obviously, I couldn't tell it without her wanting to tell it. She'd never told her story before. So the world was told a certain thing about JT LeRoy. And the film does no moralizing, no judgment. It just tells the story. And it's a very entertaining film. I'm very proud of it. It's a very emotional film. And literally just last week, I was in a meeting for a new film here in Los Angeles with a young 30-something producer from New York. And I'd never met this gentleman before. His name is Joey. And, he's your age. And we sit down, and he said that he discovered my work through the film Author of the JT LeRoy Story because he heard it talked about on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast. And I said, wow, I've never heard that episode, to be honest with you, which is interesting. And he says, oh my God, Bret did about 15 minutes on your film. And that, he then watched the film and loved it. And then he went and watched all my other films, and then we had a meeting. So it was very interesting. I actually just emailed Bret to thank him because I'd never heard this episode. And it's on the Mark Duplass episode of the Bret Easton Ellis podcast on Apple Podcasts, if anyone wants to hear it. But yeah, he really did a big spiel on Author of the JT LeRoy Story. He understood all the different levels, layers, and really appreciated what we were trying to do in telling that very complex story. So yeah, I feel like the film is definitely, it's now, I think it came out in 2016, so it's a few years later now. But yeah, people are discovering it.
I won't tell the anecdote, don't worry, because it's too long. But how do you feel that in countries that Colombia here, in fact, like I was telling you, I knew about the movie in watching a channel in Chile, and being a person that always read and loved the outsiders and the outsiders musicians, like how Japanese. How do you feel that people from all over the world keep talking about the legacy of Daniel Johnston, man?
Well, it feels great because when I discovered Daniel in 1985, I would say, I was a college radio DJ in New Jersey. And Daniel was, in the underground. He was far underground. And we had a real thriving underground, not only in America, it was an international underground. And, we were all, punk rockers or post-punk. And what was great was we all, and still do, absolutely hated commercial radio and the commercial music publications, and we hated MTV when it came on. I mean, we just hated everything, and we loved the underground, and we were underground, but it was a small, tight community, and we had pen pals all over the world. South America included, Mexico, Japan, all over Europe, Scandinavia, Australia. There was people thinking the same way. It was a small amount of us, though. all over the world. And Daniel Johnston, when he emerged in this underground, he had recorded like, I don't know, 7 to 10 whole albums on cassettes in his basement using a really cheap tape recorder. So a lot of people couldn't get past the low fidelity of the tape and the hiss on those tapes because you'd have to make duplications and you'd pick up more hiss. But if you took the time and you, what I used to like to say, squinted your ears, you could hear, an incredible piano player, an incredible songwriter, a unique guitar player who was just learning how to play, but the songwriting was just beyond. It was clear that this guy was a great artist. And then, the primitive line art on his covers of those cassettes were very striking. So I fell in love with him and I became obsessed in 85. But yeah, he was very underground. And I didn't love him more because he was underground. It's just that's where all the action was. The action was always underground back during my young era. So, I started tracking his story. I thought his story was incredible. A lot of it was mythical because he didn't tour, because he was always in and out of the mental hospital, unfortunately, suffering from manic depression. But, a lot of his songs were about that manic depression. A lot of it was about a very universal theme, unrequited love and depression. And he wrote about all this stuff so beautifully. And I must say, humorously, the guy was incredibly funny. So I loved all those things. So I started tracking his story and I thought, wow, I think this guy would be quite a movie, not just because he's a great artist, because he's got a great story and he's a great artist and a great musician. He's got it all. So I started following it. I didn't start making the film until 2000 because he was kind of like a fine wine. He didn't have a third act yet. He hadn't fermented yet. And then in 2000, he reemerged. And I attended that show in New York City at the Knitting Factory. And it was sold out. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. People were just weeping when this guy played. Daniel was that powerful. And that's when I decided with my producer, Henry Rosenthal, to embark on this very quixotic adventure, a crazy independent film about the life of Daniel Johnston, the Devil and Daniel Johnston. It took us 5 years. We did it independently. People thought we were insane to try to tell this story. People thought we were crazy. They were making fun of us, and we didn't care. And we spent $1 million on Daniel Johnston. Nobody could believe we were doing that. Everyone thought we would lose our shirt. But anyway, we did make the film. It became my signature film. We got into Sundance with it. And then I won Sundance. I won the Best Directing prize for that film. And that got me a big distribution, not just in the States, but internationally. And we still sell that film all over the world. So that's the film that really put me on the map, even though I'd made some earlier films that I'm very proud of. But that was the film where creatively, for me as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, where you can see everything that I felt like I could demonstrate, really creative, innovative storytelling, taking the documentary form and, trying to push it forward in innovative new ways using some techniques and ideas that I had developed over the years, and I got to really do them. So I really do appreciate that you guys dig the film, and a lot of young people keep talking about it and passing it around. And the title, that film just keeps growing and growing. We just got an email 2 days ago from London where it made, the number 14 best music documentary of all time. About 2 years ago, IndieWire here in the United States named it the #1 best music documentary of the 21st century. And these lists just keep coming in on that film. So it's up there with a lot of my heroes, like Bob Dylan, the Pennebaker film, Don't Look Back, the Maisels. I worked with Albert Maisels. He was a hero. He did Give Me Shelter, Rolling Stones film. So I'm very happy and proud that this film I made, this absolute labor of love, is now still being recognized as, one of the great documentaries. So and without that, we probably wouldn't be talking today. So, it helps me to get more work and make more films.
And Jeff, it's crazy. There is a page in which I am member. It's called Rate Your Music. It's a page where fans from music and movies run their course of movies. That the Devil and Daniel Johnston is number 2 on movies of 2005. In fact, the one that is on first place is No Direction Home of Bob Dylan. But man, is on the list on the best. I think it's in the top 2000 or 3000 of best movies of history, man. Of history. In fact, I told John that share you that link, and man, it's crazy because how many years has passed and you're talking with guys from Colombia about that movie. No, man, thank you. And you made a dream. And John tell me that the interview before he get recorded, so don't worry, nothing get lost.
Ayun.
So he says that, John, dale, tú me hiciste un sueño realidad.
De hecho, sí. Tengo 3 preguntas en una tricky question, pero
Pero te pido un favor,
sí.
comparte el link que yo te di de dónde está,
Claro.
¿se acuerda? El Rate Your Music.
De hecho, Shot y está la de Real Rocky. Hay 2 producciones de verdad. Una que es un documental y luego una película basada también en un documental. Yo te pregunto esto. ¿Cómo es esa esencia que ha tenido Chuck Wagner durante toda su historia, en el que ya la gente ha podido conocer la leyenda, ya él ha podido poder tener el estatus que se merece y las felicitaciones por la estatua del 24, que eso ya Linda me la tiene que decir, pero yo te pregunto cómo fue el que la gente ya haya recibido el verdadero Rocky, siempre lo ha sido, y también preguntarle sobre cómo fue el impacto que tuvo en Latinoamérica. No sabíamos que la entrevista que le hicimos a Cho fue la primera en Latinoamérica. ¿Y cómo viste el documental?
¿En serio fue la primera, John?
Sí, nunca lo ha
Okay,
dado.
now John is shocking me because as you know, and that's what also thankful because you know that the amazing Shot Wagner was here on this channel, and John is telling me that this is the first interview that he gave in Latin America. So wow, oh, yeah, I know I'm speechless. But Jeff, the question is: finally, Time is giving justice from Shot. You know that is coming a statue from him. You know that justice finally came out with all the cases from with with Rocky and everything. Yeah, man. And I don't know if you saw the interview that we made. I love John for what he does. I know sometimes you watch it, but man, being here talking with the man that made the documentary from him, that made the screenplay from Bleeder. What do you feel that finally the justice is coming from him, and also the receiving in Latin America, because knowing that this channel, this is a small channel, really, I will say outsider channel, talk with him. So man, for us, this is like a brotherhood of people that talk with that amazing guy. Tell us, man, and thank you for being here, by the way.
So I'm assuming you saw the real Rocky, the documentary I made for ESPN, the 30 for 30,
Yes.
down in Bogota, correct?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really.
We are
I'm
not
sorry?
from Bogota. We are from Cucuta. Cucuta is in the border with Venezuela.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Cool. Well, obviously, you like the film, and that's how I assume you discovered Chuck Wepner. That's a great story. I'm from New Jersey, and Chuck is, of course, from Bayonne, New Jersey. So, believe it or not, in 1975, I was 11 years old, and Chuck was about to go fight the great Ali, Muhammad Ali, for the heavyweight championship of the world. So my dad, my brother, and I were really into boxing, and certainly we follow all the Muhammad Ali fights. And all of a sudden, Ali picks our guy, the local guy, to be the contender. So before Chuck went up to the Catskills Mountains to train for the first time, full time in his entire life, because he was a liquor salesman, believe it or not, he came to my high school, Raritan High School in Hazlet, New Jersey. And they had once a year, they bring in a big sports figure, and it was called Sports Night. And, all the dads would bring their sons, And he filled the gym, the big gymnasium, at a big high school. And Chuck Wepner came, and he was wearing a full-length fur coat and a really cool pimp hat. And he showed his Sonny Liston fight, which, as you saw in my film, is the bloodiest fight in boxing history. And he led this cheer, who's going to beat Ali? And the whole audience is yelling, Wepner, Wepner. So this guy, he had the coolest nickname ever, the Bayonne Bleeder. So, we were fans of this guy right since I was age 11. So anyway, as we all know, he fought Ali and inspired Sylvester Stallone to write the great movie Rocky, great film. And after I made Devil and Daniel Johnston, I was trying to come up with a new idea for a new nonfiction story. And I was reading a great book by a friend of mine at the time who's now deceased, Nick Tosches, great writer. He wrote a book called The Devil and Sonny Liston. And at the very end of the book, he talks about Chuck Wepner because he was from Newark. And Newark and Bayonne are like right next to each other. They're just separated by a small body of water. And I said, that would be incredible. And why don't we do a film about Chuck Wepner? So I called Nick Tosches. I said, hey, Nick, what do you think of film? What do you think about a documentary about Chuck Wepner? He goes, that would be a great fucking film. And he gave me Chuck's cell phone number, and I called him. Chuck was in the middle of his liquor rounds. He was still selling liquor in Jersey City and Bayonne. And I got to him and started talking about it. And, it wasn't that much longer after that I had my whole crew from the Devil and Daniel Johnston. We all flew into Jersey. And, we probably shot that film in a month. Super 16, same as Devil and Daniel Johnston. And then the film sat for a while, and then ESPN gave us money to edit the film, and I just put it I lived in an edit room for 3 or 4 months and made the film. But it was all shot probably around 2006, I'd say. But yeah, I love that film. I love that story, and I'm glad you guys appreciate it. It's very different. A lot of people who are fans of the Devil and Daniel Johnston and the JT LeRoy Story, they have no idea about the real Rocky, because that really went out to only sports fans on ESPN, and they really loved it, but they don't know about the music and underground music geek stuff that I do. So, so it's nice that you guys enjoyed the film. That's great.
Talking about your love about the underground music, you tell us a little bit about how Japanese. But man, it's like a full circle now, because you wrote 3 episodes in this amazing series from one of my heroes that is my judge. So man, why? In fact, I don't know if I had to ask you about those or the thing that you were telling me, because you tell me that the indie on the underground circle is around the world. What artists in Colombia do you admire, or in Latin America? I don't know if you want to talk about how Japanese, my judge, or the artists in Colombia. I need to ask you, man.
Oh, we can talk about all of it. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, literally 5 days ago, down the street, I live in Los Angeles, but I live in Eagle Rock, and I'm near what's called Highland Park, which is a really great part of town. There's a great music club there called the Lodge Room. Well, guess who's playing? From South America. One of my favorite bands of all time, Os Mutantes. So I saw Os Mutantes 5 nights ago. Mind blowing. There's only one original member still alive, but boy, that band, his whole backing band was from South America, and he played all the songs that I loved. I had all those records, and I love music from all over the world. I listen to a lot of Japanese psychedelic music. I mean, it doesn't matter. As long as it touches me. It doesn't have to be in my language for me to love great music. Music is a great language, regardless of the language. So I don't speak fluent Spanish, clearly. But, I can get around. A note about Bogota, Colombia. The film I'm currently in production on. I've been making it for 2 years. It's probably not going to be ready for another 3 more years, because it's mostly animated. Is about the legendary Stardust Cowboy, which is an incredible story. And what you probably don't know, because no one knows, I'll tell it to you guys, is that the animation studio that's doing this elaborate old Disney style 2D hand-drawn animation is called Dinamita, and they're in Bogota, Colombia. And they're great and they're talented. And that's who I've been working with for the last 2 years. Except we do it. I haven't been down to Bogota yet, but I do hope to come down there. And that would be a great honor. We can hang out and get a coffee or a beer and a meal.
Oh, well, we are far from Bogota, but not far. And no, and you throw me because yes, not only but because you know about Los Mutantes. Yes, I knew about the legendary Stardust Cowboy. You have to forgive me where I knew about him. In fact, that guy Jimmy Fallon talked about him doing a stupid show, but that's where I knew. So telling me you that you will do justice to from him will be great. I don't know if you see the video Jimmy Fallon mocking him.
I don't care about Jimmy Fallon. I don't watch television.
Yes, man. Oh, I need to, I promised to John to don't translate, but I need to translate that one from the studio from Bogotá. John, rompo las reglas, tengo que traducir. Nuestro amigo Jeff va a estar en Bogotá. El
Wow,
estudio
man.
Dinamita, el de animación, es el que está haciendo, es una exclusiva y nos la dio, la animación de su nueva película que es sobre el legendario Stardust Cowboy, que le dije que por cierto, ¿no? Que menos mal Jeff dice que no es televisión, que a él le hice una broma, ya sabes quién, Jimmy Fallon, dice que no le importa. Va a hacer esa película, men. Y va a estar acá y tenemos que es como sea verlo. Man, I will do, I don't know, I will sell stuff or something, but if you came to Bogota, we need to see you. But if you want to be here in Cúcuta, don't worry. You are welcome here in the border with Venezuela. Oh my God, man. I'm speechless. Yo no sé si cerramos lo que tú digas.
¡Bravo!
No. Wow.
Yeah.
Que
No,
estamos honrados, ¿qué más?
nos sentimos orgullosos, agradecidos por haber tenido la oportunidad, que la verdad, el tener la oportunidad de hablar con ustedes como cerrar un círculo, porque hemos hablado de algunas producciones y más que hablamos con Shot, que eso cierra para nosotros es un logro. Muchísimo.
No, man, and in fact, I don't know if I'm meeting in a camera or in person, but here for us is an achievement, man. As you may know, it's like a fulfilling a circle of John creating the channel, me later joining, talking about the industry, but sometimes the underdogs. Man, talking with Chad. No, man, thank you so much. Thank you. It's really an honor to have you here. Thank you for taking your time to talk with this small channel from Colombia made with pure love from the movies and redes sociales y la foto.
Yes.
Jeff, the camera is yours. Tell your social media so people can follow you. If there is a project that they need to not go ahead, send a big hi to Colombia, to Latin America. Go ahead.
Oh, well, listen, John, Andre, I just want to thank you guys for appreciating the films. The films are my work. And the fact that it's reached you guys in Bogota, Colombia, which is, I've had a great experience working with these really, really talented animators from your country through Dinamita. So that's been, a pleasure. So it was really an honor when you guys reached out to me, and I definitely wanted to talk with you guys, and I'm happy to chat about the films and the work, and I'm amazed that they were all available, and that's great. So hopefully there'll be a new film soon, and I'd be more than happy to come back on and talk to you guys and help these films reach more people in South America. So what do you want to know about Half Japanese?
Well, man, we covered everything. So yes, this movie, in fact, in Radio Music, that page, that movie is on the top 100 from that year, from 1993. A lot of time has passed. Yeah, man, why this lot for? Because I don't know only about how Japanese, but the episodes that you make from the series from My Josh, why this lot for the for not only for the underdogs but for the indie? Why? You tell us, but I wanna know more about how Japanese being your first movie, because it's your first long movie, yes. So tell us.
Well, I started making the film Half Japanese, the band that would be king, in 1990, and it was kind of like 3 or 4 years after in America the American independent film revolution happened, very much inspired by Jim Jarmusch and his films Stranger Than Paradise and Down by Law. Spike Lee's She's Gotta Have It, and the Coen brothers' first film, Blood Simple. So that was a big inspiration to a lot of young people like myself at the time. And we all wanted to make independent films, I myself included. And basically, documentary at the time was like, PBS, eat your vegetables, it's good for you kind of filmmaking. It was really journalistic. And, I was coming out of punk rock and the American Independent Underground. And that was what we had, what we call DIY, do it yourself. So, we had a great enemy to fight, which was the corporations, So it was not just the major labels of music, but it was also Hollywood. So we wanted to be a part of what was called Indiewood and make lower budget films more creatively with no name actors, no stars. It was a very short window there. So I tried to get in on that and I failed. I wrote screenplays and couldn't get them made. I couldn't get them financed. So I identified that documentary nonfiction, which is what I really loved, could be rethought about, rethinked. It's probably not the best word. And I was a big fan of Tom Wolfe and New Journalism. And I read all the New Journalism, all the writers that he compiled in this great book that you should read called The Birth of the New Journalism. And that was a big inspiration to me. That was like also punk rock. That was taking literature and the novel and freshening it up, coming up with nonfiction and creative writing, storytelling with big ideas and ways to tell those stories. So I applied those ideas to my films. And that's what eventually became Devil and Daniel Johnston. It all came out of New Journalism. That's where I was coming from. So I really, wanted to take on nonfiction and make it more creative, more immersive, more intimate, more entertaining, more humorous, all the above in one film. And that's what the idea was. So anyway, so I decided I was going to empower myself. Nobody was going to pay for it. I decided to put my money where my mouth was and make Half Japanese, the band that would be king, with my own money, 16 millimeter. And it took me 3 years. And, it's a first effort. I got a theatrical out of it. We opened in New York City at a very prestigious art house called Film Forum, my favorite theater. And then we toured that film all over the country and Canada in all the great art houses with 16 millimeter prints. And it was like touring a band. It was like touring an independent band, and we took the artist Jad Fair of Half Japanese and we put them on planes and we put them in the theater to create a theatrical experience that was unique, where you had the film and then boom, right off the screen pops Jad Fair, the band, and he plays right there in the theater. So we made a big night out of that. That was like creative distribution. So that was amazing. And we had, at the time, we had a great independent journalism. We had great art papers in every city. And we got a lot of ink to promote those screenings and sold out a lot of those screenings. That was great. Chicago, Los Angeles was sold out, the New Art. And that was a great experience for me. That was like trial by fire. I don't think Half Japanese, The Band That Would Be King is a perfect film, but it's my first feature. And I learned so much making it that it helped me make The Devil and Daniel Johnston much better. So, but these are the steps you have to take. It's like a muscle. You have to use the muscle and learn. So by just editing all the time and writing all the time and shooting all the time and composing all the time and thinking all the time, that's, how the skill set of filmmaking gets stronger. And that's what I do with Half Japanese, The Band That Would Be King. That was my calling card film to get me on the map.
Jon and myself, we are journalists from the same university. Of course, he graduated this year. I graduated like 10 years past. Man, I always told to those stupid teachers, why don't you make us read Tom Walsh and make us read stupid journalists that we don't care? So, man, Yes, I tend to that independent journalism because from that independent journalism, I knew your work. I mean, I watched you in in a channel on Chile because in the channels from Colombia, they don't talk about that your movies and they don't talk about the movies from the authors that you mentioned. But thanks to that independent journalism, I knew you, so that's why I love this career. I don't like the way he's doing in Colombia, but I love this career. And now, man, David Hayes, and thank you.
Do you want me to do a
Uh,
shout out? What's the name of
and
the? Sorry.
Jhon Jatenjor's interview, but if you say John's channel, it will be fine.
Okay.
And of course, my Andres.
Okay. We'll do one on one. Here we go. Ready? This is Jeff Feuerzeig telling you to check out Jon's channel because Jon's channel is the best. This is Jeff Feuerzeig giving a shout out to Andre. Andre rocks Colombia hard.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Eso es increíble, Jet.
Oh,
De verdad, agradecemos mucho esta oportunidad. Nos cumplió un sueño. Gracias, bienvenido siempre al canal. Y, hombre,
va a volver.
sí, y que ya
Es tu
somos
casa.
sus nuevos colegas, nuevos amigos. Y muchas gracias. Y la verdad, muy agradecidos.
Yet it's not only a thank you, it's a welcome always. This is your house. We know and we hope that we talk later about the Legendary Stardust Cowboy and whatever you want, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Jhon. Thank you, Andre. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Have a great day. Peace.
Have a great day.
Also,
Good weekend.
good weekend.